Hi everyone. Welcome to today's instruction session. We will talk about performing research to support your work in your art history course and beyond. My name is Katarzyna Maciak, and I was asked to take some time out of your course to go over some research concepts to better prepare you for the upcoming assignment. By the end of this class, you will have a better understanding of the following. The research process broken down into steps, important databases that you will find useful in the process and how to use them, defining and categorizing information, and we will go over formats, types of information, and how to work it into personalized research process. I will check in frequently whether you have any questions, and I will welcome comments at key points of the class, but otherwise I will ask you to stay muted to minimize background noise. Please note that in this presentation, I'm covering electronic resources available through the library's databases as opposed to print, books, or journals, as access to those can be limited, of course. Can I quickly confirm that everyone can see the presentation that I'm sharing? Great, thank you so much. So this class is an instructional session embedded in an undergraduate art history course, and we are starting off with the assumption that you are at least a little familiar with the library website, and this class is meant to introduce you to resources and processes helpful in performing art history research, including both academic and visual research with help of our library's databases. You were given an assignment that is due next week. The text of the assignment is: based on the movements discussed this semester, analyze 3 or more works of art by the same or different artists, including analysis of existing scholarship relating to the artist, the time period, historical or social context of the work. Before you even determine the subject of your research paper, you can identify your information needs. So what types of information you are going to be required to use in your paper. If you could, using the annotation tool, circle or underline keywords that describe some of the information you might need to find to use in your research. If you have any trouble finding the annotation tool, let me know. You should be able to find it in the options at the top of your screen. So once again, just highlight a few of the types of information you will need for your paper. Great, I see historical social context, time period. Existing scholarship, that's very good. Great. Works of art is definitely going to be important. Great, so we highlighted some great information. So we have already an idea of, I see someone in the chat, everything good? Yes. You highlighted some key information, so you're already all good to go in terms of looking for information. So as many of you were able to recognize the text of this assignment, let me just clear the drawings. The text of the assignment asks you to use in your argument 3 works of art and existing scholarship on the subject. So these are very key elements. The types of information not included in the assignment are reference and non-scholarly works, which may not be required exactly in the assignment, but will actually help you to build your research. And to keep these formats and types of information in mind as we dive into what research actually entails, and we will circle back to these concepts in a few slides. And from performing research on any subject, it's helpful to be aware of the nonlinear nature of research. If you search online, you'll find 100 different graphics with arrows pointing many ways, some of them as simple as this one, some of them more complicated. But really at its most basic, research can start with, just so you can see on the screen, defining the information, which we just did, locating the appropriate source of finding this information, selecting the parts of articles or books or images you need, organizing it into logical structure, And we would then present that as evidence of your argument and assess its effectiveness. And this sounds like a simple set of steps from one to the other, but more often than not, you will find yourself going back and forth between stages, redefining your argument and changing the direction of your research, and also editing how your paper is organized and so forth. And while this seems time consuming, it's important to account for that in your work. You will be happy to have done it in the end. If you just set out to find 3 images to articles, you won't be able to analyze other sources, and you will not get the same kind of perception of your subject. Does anybody have any questions so far? Feel free to use the chat or unmute yourself. I know that more people are comfortable using the chat these days. Great. So now that you have identified your information needs, we need 3 works of art, some scholarly articles. Where will you start your search for information? So let's assume that you have a vague idea of a subject you want to discuss. So maybe either you have an artist you are interested in, or a time period you find interesting, or a visual element you want to discuss in your paper. So where would you start? If you could circle 1 or more sources where you might begin your search. Wikipedia, the library OneSearch is an excellent source. I totally understand Google. So as you do this, I would like to emphasize that there is no single right way to begin your research. Some people might prefer to start with an encyclopedia entry or a Wikipedia scroll or a search for artwork. But if you know where to find the information that you are looking for, it will save you a lot of time and stress and produce better results. So you'll find more information about using specific databases in other tutorials. I will remind you of one thing, that to use the databases to their fullest, it's best if you go through the King Library website. The library subscribes to resources that are not available to the public, but you will be able to take advantage of them using your single sign-on. Be aware of the following resources which will help your research. So the King Library Catalog, as we already pointed out, is a great resource. It will not only have books and databases listed, but often articles or book chapter level records that you might find useful. There's ArtStore you can use for artwork search. JSTOR and Art and Architecture Source are great for finding journal articles. And Oxford Art Online and Grove Art Online are great databases for reference information. So like think encyclopedia, but much more extensive. I will also mention a site called CC Search, which contains very high quality images available under a Creative Commons license, which means that you can use them more freely than some images you find in ArtStore. Do you have any questions so far at this stage? Great, no burning questions. So once again, I'll remind you to use resources like ArtStore and JSTOR through the institution's library page. I want to now test our knowledge of what we've learned so far. How do we select the right database to find the information you need? If you could connect to the box of databases you would use to find scholarly resources to the right box with the database listed, and which resources you would use to find high quality images. Great, everybody knows JSTOR, it's an excellent resource. ArtStore kind of speaks for itself. That's exactly right. Yep, Art and Architecture Source, as we will see in a moment, is an EBSCO hosted database that has a lot of content, and it's also listed on our library databases, Art and Art History research guide. That's great. Thank you so much. So now let's talk about the difference in the different types of resources you'll be using for this assignment and research in the future. And this is circling back to some of those resources that we identified at the beginning of this presentation. And you may be familiar with the definitions of these terms, but if you understand the role they play in research, it will help you organize your information you find in a very logical way. So for purposes of art and art history research, reproductions, so online images of artwork, are considered primary sources. And this may seem like the easiest element of your research paper, but skilled and successful visual analysis is really an art in and of itself. So giving some real attention to your visual analysis can make or break your argument. An ArtStore, as we've already said, is a great database for this purpose. The reproductions you'll find there are of very high quality, both in color and resolution. And remember that if you use an image in your paper, you have to cite it like any other source. Secondary sources offer analysis or interpretation of primary sources. Secondary sources you will likely come across in an assignment like this one are journal articles or scholarly academic books, maybe some magazine articles. And using those peer-reviewed secondary sources can be a great support for your argument. Scholarship not only builds on previous research, but also works as kind of a conversation between academics. So your paper will not only write about other people's research, but also respond to it in some way. When it comes to tertiary sources, ironically, you might actually use those as a kickoff for your research. Tertiary sources are a great way to get a sense of agreed on facts about artists. So encyclopedia entry will synthesize existing research and will give you really valuable information to base your research on. And Wikipedia articles are, for instance, an example of a tertiary source. Does that sound good to everyone? Any burning questions? Excellent. So I want to talk about non-scholarly resources, and it's important to know the distinction between scholarly and non-scholarly sources. You will find that there is a breadth information you will find in a subject that might interest you that is not published in peer-reviewed books or journals. With the understanding that they don't go through the same type of scrutiny and they will not carry the same type of weight in a research paper, it's really good to recognize the value of existing thought on a subject. So adding these types of resources such as blog posts, magazine articles, podcasts, museum blogs are excellent sources of information. Some of them will write reviews of their exhibitions. This will really help you expand your understanding of a subject and help you make new connections. And also in case of contemporary artists or lesser known artists, you might have a really hard time finding peer-reviewed papers on your subject. So consider this an invitation rather than an obstacle. You can push your research in a new direction and help formulate an argument on the existing scholarship. And maybe if you cannot find a scholarly article, you'll be the person to write that scholarly article on the subject that you can't find information on. So as a way of summing up today's lesson, I wanted to run through a mock-up research process. You can follow along with me on screen or search on your own, although I know that if you don't have two screens at your disposal, that might be difficult. So feel free to just watch my process on the screen. There we go. So in this mock-up, I will focus on an artist whose name is Théophile Alexandre Steinlen. Please excuse my French. I just discovered his drawings recently, and I wanted to maybe explore his work in my research paper. So there are several places I could start. So maybe I want to begin by finding good reproductions to analyze in my paper. And ArtStore is a good place to start. And as a reminder, you want to access this through the library site. Can I confirm that everyone can see my ArtStore screen? Either through chat? Yes, excellent. Thank you so much. So great. As you can see, Artstor has many different reproductions of the artist's work, and to kind of demonstrate the quality, I always love zooming in, and you can really perform much better visual analysis on an image like this and something that you might find in Google Images, for instance. Great, so maybe I have selected a few images that I might be interested in. Maybe now I want to find some background information on the artist. I'm going to Oxford Art Online, which has a selection or a collection of different reference entries about different artists and movements. It's also a wonderful resource. And I can find a great reference entry on the artist, which, as you will see in a moment, also has citations. So I can use that as a basis of my further research as well. Great, so I have some background information, I have my images, and now I want to find some scholarly resources. So I will go to the database mentioned already, Art and Architecture Source. And I will search for the name of the artist. Okay, so we have 20 sources, and if we narrow it down to things that are scholarly or peer-reviewed, we come down to 7. And as you can see, very few of them are actually available full text for us. So I actually chose this artist on purpose. I think this is a great example of the fact that sometimes you have to circle back and maybe rephrase your research, because you might not find the exact type of information in scholarly peer-reviewed works that you might need. For instance, I might want to immediately write how Alexandre Steinlen fits in the field of French artists drawing cats, but as we can see, that may not be immediately available. So I might have to, just as we said that the process may not be linear, I might have to go back, I may have to broaden my search, I may have to focus on several different French artists from the same period and form my argument in a different way. Does anybody have any questions so far? Great, I'll go back to my presentation. So this is a very short lesson on a very broad topic, but there are some key concepts I would like you to remember, and you can probably guess some of them already. Research is not linear, and don't get discouraged if you have to retrace your steps, and it's part of the process. Be aware of your process, and thinking about the way you do research as you do it will help you develop your own preference and style. Scholarship is a conversation, and you are not only a collector and consumer of information, but a creator and participant in scholarship as well. Knowledge of databases is important, and you'll need a lot of experience with that. But knowing the bigger concepts behind research will help you apply your knowledge to different subjects and different resources and different databases. Before I finish, I would like to remind you that the library staff is here to help you. If you have any questions in the future, don't hesitate to reach out to me or one of our reference librarians, and really no question is too trivial. Before I take up any more of your time, I would like to ask you to take a follow-up survey that I will send in the chat that will help me assess the success of this class and improve it for future students. And feel free to reach out to me and email me after class. But if anybody has any burning comments, I can address them right now. And I hope to see you in future classes, and best of luck in your research.